Hello, welcome to COVID Chat number 17. Last time in the COVID Chat 16, I began to take up a very practical subject about reading good Christian literature, and trying to give some encouragement as to why I think it's important to make it your habit to work into your schedule the reading of good Christian books. And so we only covered the first argument, the first reason that I gave to do that, and that is that reading good Christian books will help you to grow in grace and your knowledge of Christ, and it can expose you to the teaching ministry of great men of God throughout church history. When Christ gave pastor teachers to the church for the building up of his church, it's not just limited to those who are preaching now or even to your own pastor, but to all of the pastors and teachers that God has given to the church, both now and in church history, those who have been sound and biblical. And you can learn from them. You can center the ministries of men like Martin Luther and John Calvin and Augustine and many of these great men, many of the great Puritans, by reading their works that have been handed down to us. So that was the first reason. And now moving on to some other reasons in this chat. It will also help you to be a better spiritual leader to those for whom you are responsible. And I think especially I would say to the men, it's very important for you. There's that passage in 1 Corinthians 14 where wives are encouraged, if they have a question about something that's been taught or said in the church, that they should go to their husbands and ask them at home. Now, what is the assumption in that statement? Well, that a wife can expect that her husband is the kind of man who studies the word, that she can go to, and that he'll be able to answer those questions, or he'll be the kind of man who will go back to the word and to other resources until he's able to find the answer as part of being the spiritual leader in his home. But of course, this is not limited to men. All of us, women and men, have those for whom we are responsible, and the reading of good Christian literature can help you to be a better spiritual leader. Thirdly, reading good Christian books will help you by broadening your English vocabulary, which will help you then to express truth better to those for whom you are responsible. Fourthly, good Christian books will answer questions that you've had, and not only that, it will address other questions that perhaps you never thought of, but perhaps it's good for you to think about them. Oh, I never thought of that. That's a good question. That's an important issue. In that book, reading a lot, reading good Christian literature will raise questions and also give you answers to questions that you've already had, and answer those questions you ought to have had, if I might put it that way. Fifthly, it will improve your conversation. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth that which is unto edification. And of course, as we grow in our knowledge and understanding of church history, of Christian biography, Christian doctrine and truth, and the writings and teachings of the Bible, we're able to engage in more profitable spiritual conversation. But if we have nothing stored up within it, if we haven't learned anything, we don't know very much, then of course the degree of the edification of our conversation will be much less. And then sixthly, reading good Christian books will help you to develop a better sense of how good arguments are constructed if you're reading good Christian literature, and how they're developed in proving points. And that will increase your ability to weigh strong arguments over against weak arguments. Seventhly, reading good Christian books will help you to keep from wasting too much time watching television or cruising the internet. In other words, it's a good and profitable use of your time. Eighthly, reading especially good Christian biographies and histories, that will help you to be a wiser person, wiser in evaluating present situations, and help you to learn from both the mistakes of others before you that they have made, and also from the good things that they did. So these are just a number of additional reasons to add to that one that I gave last time. And now I will just make a few suggestions and give a few guidelines to help you in your reading. First of all, make sure you read books that are sound and are worth reading. I think I said last time, the old cliche, I'd rather send my child into a liquor store to buy a Coke than into the average Christian bookstore to buy a book. Everything that claims to be Christian is not. or is not sound and helpful. Well, how do I know then what books are sound and worth reading? Well, my first answer to that is ask your pastors. We would be more than glad to talk to you and to direct you to good Christian literature. Also, as those of you who are part of our church know that we have a bookstore in our church where we keep on hand. We're very careful about what we put in that bookstore. There's a whole host of wonderful books on almost every topic in the Christian life and with regard to Christian doctrine. And so check out the bookstore. Also, there are certain distributors of books and publishers that are especially reputable that you can generally trust. And in terms of book distributors, I just mentioned three very excellent ones: Reformation Heritage Books, Westminster Books, Solid Ground Christian Books. Anything you get from these sources is usually going to be very good in whatever category you're looking to read in. And you can go to the websites and see what they have. And then also in terms of reputable publishers, there's Banner of Truth, Sola Deo Gloria, Evangelical Press, who published the little book that I had recently published. There's Reformation Heritage, Presbyterian and Reformed, and then Free Grace Publications, which is a newer a publisher from down in Arkansas. They're going to be publishing a new book that I'll have coming out probably this month on preaching for conversions, but they have published a lot of good, excellent Christian and Reformed literature. And there are a number of others. My second suggestion is to read from a variety of categories. We all kind of have our hobby horses, those areas we're immediately attracted to, but if that's all we ever read about and read in that subject, we can become very imbalanced. So it's good to vary your categories. I used to keep in one of my notebooks different categories, and I would try to make sure I was at least doing some reading along the way over the years in all of them. Think of categories like historical books, devotional books, biographies, or theological works, biblical studies like Bible introductions and surveys, or commentaries, good commentaries, especially devotional commentaries for the average church member. And then there's literature, Christian literature addressing contemporary issues. Those are some good category headings: historical books, devotional books, biographies, theological works, biblical studies, literature addressing contemporary issues. Good Christian literature in all of these categories, and I would encourage you to vary your reading within these categories. The third suggestion is give special attention to areas where you find yourself weak or uninformed. If there's an area of Christian truth where you say, I really don't feel very grounded in that area, I'm not sure I really understand that, well, I would encourage you to really zero in on that area. Whatever it may be. Let's say you could go to Reformation Heritage, or you could go to Westminster Press and type in the subject or the doctrinal issue, and it'll give you a list of books that you can purchase on that subject. And the same is true. You can see how our own bookstore is divided up into categories: practical and theological, and historical and biographical. And so you could really focus in on beginning to work your way through those various areas of your understanding of truth that you feel weak and you don't think you're really well grounded in. And then I would say, fourthly, don't be intimidated by books. Oh, how often people say, oh, Pastor, I just don't read. I'm not a very good reader. I just find it hard to read. Well, let's imagine that you only read 5 pages a day. And you only do that 4 days a week. We have a 7-day week, but out of that 7-day week, you only read 4 of those days, and you only read 5 pages a day. Okay, what would that be? That would be 20 pages a week. Well, let's imagine that you only do that 40 weeks out of the year. Now, remember, there are 52 weeks in a year, so that means 12 whole weeks, 3 whole months. You don't read at all. If you're just reading 4 days a week, I'm not encouraging you to just do that. I'm just saying, let's just say that's all you did. 4 days a week, okay, 5 days, 5 pages each of those days. That's 20 days a week. You only do that 40 weeks out of the year. So it's 20 pages a week for 40 weeks. Now, how many pages will you have read by the end of the year? You will have read 800 pages of good Christian literature. I mean, you could pick up a big volume of volume 1 of Jonathan Edwards' works. What happens is we look at these books and it just seems overwhelming that we could ever get through them. But don't think of the book that you've got in terms of, I got to get this book read in 1 week, but just think of plotting. And as you plod along, reading a few pages at a time, every day or 4 days, even just 4 days a week, think about how many pages you will have read by the end of the year and how many good, sound Christian books you will have worked your way through. So don't be intimidated. And then fifthly, I would say, read with others. My wife and I, for a number of years, we read books together. We're not doing that right now other than in family worship, but we used to do that regularly. We would, as we would go to bed tonight, whatever the book we were reading, we might read 3, 4, 5 pages, pick it up again the next night before we go to bed. And we read through probably 12 really good, solid books. Our reading at the time was focused on good Christian biographies and also some good historical stuff, Christian history. And it was a great blessing to our souls to read through some of the excellent books that we were able to get through, some of them very thick books that we were able to work our way through together, just reading a little bit at a time as we would go to bed at night. And that helped us in our early days, especially both of us, to get more grounded in our understanding of certain things and to be of oneness of heart and mind in our understanding of those things. It was really good for our marriage to do that. And then also you can read to your children. And one of the contexts in which you can do that is in family worship. We've done different things in family worship, reading the Bible, working through the Bible, reading, but sometimes we'll read good Christian books to our children, and that's good for them and it's good for us. For example, right now, I'm reading in our family worship the autobiography of John Paton. Now, we read that in the past when my 4 older kids were young. They've gone through it, but now my 2 boys that are the younger boys, now we're taking them through that book and we're reading it together, and it's a blessing to our whole family. And that's a context in which you can be yourself reading good Christian books as you read them to your family. Not just in family worship, there can be other occasions where you can curl up together as a family and begin to work your way through a very good and excellent Christian book. So these are just some suggestions. The bottom line is pick up good books and start reading them. May God help you to do so and thereby to grow in your Christian walk and your understanding of God's word and of his great works in history. And may it be inspiring to you in your devotion to Jesus Christ. Well, may God bless you. May you have a wonderful day. Goodbye.